Hello, beautiful. I'm your host, Nicole Goff. Welcome to the Ecstatic Life Podcast, the podcast for women who want it all: health, wealth, freedom, authenticity, love, beauty, all of the hidden gems just waiting to be uncovered. This is the podcast for women who are ready to discover their inner creatrix, to discover their inner manifester, and who want to find the ecstatic in every day. Hi, and welcome to the Ecstatic Life Podcast. I'm host Nicole Goff, and today I'm here with Aaron Zakowski, who is a husband, a father of 6, and a faith-driven fatherhood coach. He helps dads break free from guilt and shame and show up with presence, gratitude, and intentional leadership to become the fathers and husbands God has intended them to be. And today we are going to explore how fatherhood coaching can bring more presence and joy into the family dynamic. So welcome, Aaron. I am so happy to have you here today.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah. And it was so great to meet you through our mutual coaching program and get to know you there. It has been such a resource for me to find people to come on this podcast too. Mm-hmm. And I was just so grateful for that aspect. Did you find the same?
Yeah, absolutely. Meeting great people, super grateful that we connected, and, our previous conversations have been great. And I'm just excited to share what we have with everybody else, with all your listeners.
Yeah, me too. You are only the second man I have had on the podcast. I have gotten requests. I have gotten complaints, actually, that ecstatic living is for men too, and that I should be more open and have more conversations with men, and specifically fathers. So I'm really excited to have you on. You'll be the first dad coach, the first dad that I have talked to on this podcast. And I would like to start off kind of at the beginning. So tell me about why you left your marketing career behind and started focusing on helping fathers and got into fathering coaching.
Yeah, for sure. So for most of the past 15 years, like you said, I was working in marketing, and it was fun. It was rewarding. But over the last couple of years, I just found myself not feeling very passionate about it, not feeling excited about it anymore. And as a result, maybe, business wasn't as successful either. And so I've worked with some of my own coaches over the past couple of years in different aspects of my life. And part of it was like a mindset business coach, a great guy named Cliff Ravenscraft, who I worked with. And I guess some of just like the questions that I'd been afraid to ask myself in the past, like what would I do if I wasn't working in marketing? I finally recently, last year, allowed myself to ask. And what I really came to is that, coaching is something that I've had an incredible experience with. And that I would like to be able to give that gift and that experience to other people. And so it was like, okay, great. Be a coach of what? And then again, through some soul searching and stuff, I realized that the place where I think I've been most successful is as a parent and hopefully as a husband as well, where people give me unsolicited, praise within my community, or people see me with my kids and tell me I'm a great dad. And people have come to me over the years, looking for mentorship and how they're dealing with their own families and such. And I've been, blessed to be able to sit down with younger fathers, or sometimes not even younger fathers, and give advice that's usually been productive and helpful to help make other families stronger. So when I was deciding to go into coaching, I realized, that's the place that I could have the biggest impact and that I would feel the most fulfilled. And so, I recently just, as I was getting started, just declared for myself and for the world, that, my purpose in life is to be, the best father and husband that I could be, and to help more fathers become the best fathers that they could be as well. And when I say a father, I mean, that means how are you for your kids? How are you for your wife? And how are you as a man as well? Meaning fatherhood for me isn't just about, knowing all the right answers, how we parent our kids. Hopefully we could do that also, but it's more about how do we as men, as fathers, as husbands, become the best that we can be.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's the community aspect of that too, being a leader in your community. And I know your faith community is very important to you. So how has that shaped you? How has your faith shaped you with your marriage, your fatherhood journey, and now your coaching journey?
Absolutely. I live in a Orthodox Jewish community here in Los Angeles. And it's kind of, the center of my world, serving God, Hashem, as we call him, is the center of everything we do. Now, the most important role that God has put me in this world to do is to be a father, be a husband, to raise my family, in a similar way of believing in God, recognizing that we could, as we say, create a dwelling place for God in this world. That's our mission. That's why we believe God created us over here. And so, whereas there's so many professions, there's so many things that people do in this world that are holy and good. But if I can get down to the root of it, I feel like this is the core. And if I can create a career for myself and be able to provide for my family what we need, and at the same time be able to uplift families, then that's probably the greatest thing I could be doing with my time here.
Absolutely. And do you feel like you were really soul led into this mission? Because I know personally for me, that's how it felt. It felt like a soul calling, like God was really speaking to me and lifting me up to do this. Did you have that same experience?
I don't know if I would say that God was speaking to me, so to speak, but I will say that my faith has led me to make the jump into this career. I think it's no secret that most coaches, or we'll say coaching, isn't usually the most profitable business in the world. I have a large family. We live in Los Angeles. My expenses are very high. I need to make a good amount of money to support my family. I have been, through my faith, I've been able to take that jump. Again, we don't want to believe in miracles, but at the same time, recognizing that if our income and everything we have comes from God, and God is able to do anything, that if I have the faith and the trust in Him, that if I continue to do good, if I continue to work hard to build a new business, coaching men, helping families and women and children also, of course, that God will make it profitable, that He will make it work, that He will make me successful. And so that's where my faith comes into the process, to say that if I go all in and commit myself, working hard as I would in any other business as well, towards helping people, and obviously there's a for-profit element of it for my family as well, that I will be successful and that God will make it successful.
Yes. And I don't think that the profit part is a negative, because we should be like, you can't fill from an empty cup, you can't deplete yourself. Some people live in service and in faith in a way that they do just give. But for most of us, and especially those of us raising families, we do need that, and that is part
Yep.
of it. And that was something that I had struggled with, coming into my coaching career too, of like the need to give and give away, and how I felt that was the righteous thing to do. But I've had to come to terms with that myself.
I think there's something really nice. Obviously, we should, regardless of what our careers are, we should be serving other people. We should be helping other people, mentor other people in the areas where you are strong, whether that's in business, whether that's in their family, their marriage, whatever it might be, right? If we have what to give of ourselves, we should. But at the same time, those of us who are able to help, whether you're a therapist, whether you're a doctor, whatever, like, we all help people, but we sometimes need to also be paid for it. So in an ideal world, could we be doing this for free? That'd be great. But there's no shame in charging for it also. And there's also an element often when you're helping somebody, that if people don't listen to free advice as much as when they pay for it. So it went by somebody paying to go through coaching, to go to a therapist, to go to a physical trainer, whatever it might be, they're more likely to implement the coaching and the advice and the mentorship that they've received if it's something that they've paid for.
I have found that. Yeah, I have found that to be so true.
Yeah.
And it's true. If you have that skin in the game, you will show up when you make that commitment. Even if
Right.
it's something small, you will
Yeah.
show up. So yeah, I 100% agree
Yeah.
with that. To take a little turn here, I was curious in what ways you and your wife work as a team in your marriage and your parenting.
I mean, we're an incredible team. My wife is phenomenal. She's so hardworking. She's so dedicated to our family. I mean, everything we have is because of her. I mean, I guess it's because of both of us. She'd hopefully say the same thing about me. But we really have dedicated ourselves to taking care of our family. We have a big family. We work extremely hard to take care of them emotionally, physically, everything else. But we're also invested in our own marriage and our own relationship, because I think that's the foundation for a healthy home, is that there is a healthy marriage at the core of that. Obviously, it's not to say that other family units can't also be successful and take care of their kids, but I think a healthy marriage is the most ideal situation for children to be living in. So we invest very strong. We're fortunate that my wife and I are both pretty even-tempered, even-keeled type of people, that we don't hold grudges, we don't fight too much, and we're both pretty forgiving, I think, which is one of the most important elements. And again, some people have to work harder on those things. Everyone's got their own challenges, and I think sometimes there's an element where when you just kind of get along, you maybe don't have to communicate as well, because you just know you're both forgiving, and you'll both move forward, but you don't necessarily always forget about things. So I think even in a marriage like ours, where we're both, like I said, pretty even tempered, and we don't get angry and such, it's still important that we maintain, the regular and clear and open communication with each other, where it might not feel as necessary. Sometimes if you're in a fight, right, in another relationship, you fight with your spouse, then you feel like, okay, now we've got to go and make up, and we've got to have that hard conversation. And so there's something very valuable in that conversation sometimes, because you clear the air and you talk about the things that you may have been hurt by, and you apologize for the things that may have, hurt your spouse. And I think sometimes, and I think that's a very powerful thing. And in our relationship, my wife and I don't fight much. So we have to be intentional about making sure we're still having those conversations to give each other what we need, and the love and the support, and all of that. And I think our kids see that, we always are prioritizing each other first, and respecting each other in the home, and communicating well. And sometimes even when we do get to those rare times when we're yelling and fighting over something, and the kids will yell at us, to be quiet, and like, why are you fighting over that? And I have to yell at the kids, like, no, be quiet. Let we call it, or ima, mom in Hebrew, have it out. Like, we'll be fine. This is not going to be a non-lasting fight, but like, we're disagreeing about something in a passionate way, and that's okay, because we know how to work past it pretty quickly.
Yeah, and especially when the children can be modeled the repair, and they see you coming back together and making up in whatever way the conflict needs to be repaired. Do you guys set intentional time? Do you make like dates where you come together to talk about anything that's on your heart, or do you create any kind of intentional container around that?
I say I try to. I'm a little embarrassed to say I try to, as a coach. It's something that I really do push other people to do very strongly, because I think it is so important. And so we should be better about it. We do it. We do have our rituals that I've learned from another coach that I work with, that have been very, very impactful in allowing us to really open up and share, sharing what we appreciate and love and respect about the other one, sharing what additional support we might need from the other one, and just spending that time together.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned your coaching. So what have you personally found helpful and empowering working with other coaches?
Working with other coaches. The person I work with most recently, his name is Yehuda Kamen. He works in Polarity within the marriage and relationship space. And I've found that to be something relatively new to me, understanding those dynamics between males and females, and where we are at our core. And that's something that's been very powerful for me within my relationship, and something I try to pass on, to the people I coach with, and that I work with as well. And just understanding, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, could you define that? Because I'm not sure that I've talked about polarity on this podcast yet, but it's something that I've been delving into. I haven't had coaching on it necessarily, but with my coach, we work on these concepts, and it's something I've been digging into podcasts about, and it's been on my heart. So I would love it if you would just go into a little bit of the definition so people know what we're talking about.
I will do my best. I'll tell you, if you're interested in that topic, Yehuda Kamen is the absolute authority in my mind on that. So if you want a third male on your podcast, I might recommend considering him. I will do my best to define it. I usually get it wrong, or at least not as clear as I want it to be. But it's the idea of male and female energy obviously being very different and working together, whereas a man generally wants to, in his nature, take care of others well, I guess a woman does also, but in a different way.
Hello, loves. A quick pause here to share something exciting. If you've been enjoying the Ecstatic Life podcast, you can now support the show on Patreon for just $5 a month. Your support helps to keep these soulful conversations flowing, and you'll get exclusive bonus content like health and wellness tutorial videos to help you live more intentionally and joyfully every day. I also wanted to let you know that I will be taking a little creative pause from Thanksgiving through New Year's to rest, reset, and prepare for season 2 coming in 2026 with a fresh new look, a brand new studio, and even more inspiring guests, practices, lifestyles, and modalities to help you live your most ecstatic life. During the break, I will be releasing some of my favorite podcast guest appearances and my most loved episodes of 2025. So stay tuned, stay inspired, and if you'd like to support the show, you can join me on Patreon today, patreon.com/Nicole Goff Speaks. Back to the show.
What I'll say about the polarity thing is that I'm not the authority to really maybe define it so well. I don't have it down to those clear points the way that I can teach it and explain it yet. But there are elements of it that I've learned to appreciate within my relationship that have been very, very powerful and that I do incorporate into my relationship. And primarily, I guess what I would say is that's recognizing that a man wants to lead and be respected in his family much more. And a woman wants to be emotionally protected and safe and free in a relationship. And that's a very incomplete definition of it. But even within that, recognizing that if a woman can support her man, can encourage him to trust him, and a man can create an environment where a woman feels protected and safe emotionally, physically, where she can feel free and know that she won't be harmed. I don't want to say like deeply harmed, but harmed in an emotional way by any aggressive behaviors from someone that loves her. Then that creates a more flourishing, natural state for both of them to be in. I don't know if that's a clear definition, but it's kind of how I internalize it a little bit.
Yeah, that's your experience of it. My experience of it is to imagine that symbol of the yin yang, the yin and the yang, and how, they balance each other out, the masculine energy and the feminine energy. And I also envision water and a container. So men being the vessel, the container, or the sides of a river, the river banks. Stable, creating container, holding space, and a woman being the water that flows freely and fills up that space. So those are the images that it conjures for me. And my lived experience of it is very similar. It's that for me to feel into my feminine is to soften and to let go of control, and to speak from my heart, to live from my heart. And the desire for my husband to be in his masculine and to create that container, that safety, hold that space, whether it's the physical space or, the finances in the family, safety, all of this, hold that container around me so that I can soften and feel safe to be and live from my heart. So, yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. So that you said that has been what you have been recently working with in coaching. Have you personally received fatherhood or marriage coaching that has helped shape you as a coach?
Well, I'd say the work that I've done with Yehuda came in as a marriage coach is someone that I've worked with and has been very, very powerful for me in helping me to step up and well, I'll take a step back. Thank God I've always had a very healthy and good marriage. I'm married 22 years now, and maybe it was a year and a half ago that, Yehuda, someone that I've known, we live in the same community for a while, but, when he started getting into the coaching and the polarity, I realized that it was a good investment, even though, like I said, I have a good marriage. It's not like, we're fighting and any of those problems. But if I can make it better, that could be one of the best investments that I could ever make. And so I did quite a bit of coaching with Yehuda, and I found it to be extremely valuable. And as I said before, even though I almost can't explain it well, but some of the practices that he's helped my wife and I put in place in terms of some of the communication meetings and such that we implement, some of the ways that I've learned to show up for her and understand her emotions in a different way, understanding the ideas for a woman of safety in maybe a way that wasn't conscious to me in my thoughts previously, has been quite powerful. And so that experience, just working with a coach. So within my marriage, that was a very helpful way to help us grow. But also that experience working with a coach where I can talk about where am I at, where are my frustrations, where do I feel like I need to grow, being able to ask someone who's wise in his new ideas, how can I go from good to great, or how can I solve this problem within my relationship and such, is just so valuable and so beneficial. And as men, we often feel like we have to hold everything inside and we don't share our feelings so much, and we don't talk enough. And when we do, and we do have someone that we can speak openly and freely with in a confidential manner like that, it really can take a load off. And I think not enough men open themselves up to that kind of experience, and it could be very, very powerful. It's something that most men probably need on some level. It's something, the women who are listening probably should be encouraging their men to go find, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a good friend, if there's like a men's group they could be a part of, or if not, a therapist or a coach, but someone they could really talk to and just take some of the weight off emotionally, because men carry a lot. Men carry a lot of weight that they don't talk about and they don't want to share with their wives. And they try to be masculine, they try to be the hero, but they're carrying a lot for their families and for themselves and for their communities, and they're protecting, and that takes its toll. And I think men don't need to be martyrs in the sense that they hold on to all that internally, and it really helps be able to talk through it and get maybe validation for the places where we feel maybe shame and failure and we're not doing a good job, and encouragement to be able to be stronger. Don't know what the original question was, but I think that's.
Yeah, I know. And I think that men have lost a lot of men's spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, I know you have a great community where you are, but for most men that I know, they don't have that supportive community around them. They've lost a lot of the men's spaces. And I do see a resurgence of intentionally trying to bring men together for the camaraderie and for that support. And is there any aspect of the coaching that you're doing yet where you're creating those kind of containers for men's work?
So we haven't started any group coaching yet. It's definitely something that I'm starting to think about. But I do see, some of the men that I speak with in my coaching work, I don't want to say they're lonely, but they don't have other men with whom they can speak in many cases about the challenges that they're having. And everyone in their family has their own unique challenges and things that they're dealing with. And sometimes it's just very beneficial for people just to have another man who's not going to be judgmental to speak with. And often the men that come to me, they feel like they're failing, they feel shame, they feel like they're not doing a good job. But when I hear the efforts that they're making on behalf of their families, I have only respect for most of these men, in terms of how much they are dedicating. And often there's just very little tweaks and changes that we could help them facilitate through, intentional behavior and some mindset and such, that can help them to go from maybe being, maybe emotionally distant, but still carrying so much out of so much deep love for their family, to helping them learn how to continue to carry that weight, but also to be present more emotionally for the family, in a way that makes people maybe feel and recognize in a deeper way what the father is actually doing within their family. Because sometimes they can be doing it and it's not even noticed.
Yeah. So that leads me to a question that I wanted to ask you around communication. So why is it, do you think, that most fathers do have such a hard time with communicating with their kids and with their wives?
I think there's a few things. First of all, I think maybe in previous generations, the dads didn't know how to communicate as well. They're coming from, a more maybe, we'll call it traditional or closed off approach where, that wasn't really the case. So it wasn't modeled for them when they were young. And if they didn't learn how to be open with their emotion, how to be emotional present, and again, I think this generation does a much, much better job with it than previous generations did in many cases. It needs to be learned. You need to learn how to be vulnerable a little bit, and intentional in terms of having those hard conversations and sharing your emotions, because I think we're taught as men that we shouldn't. But at the same time, the natural masculine way that we spoke about before is to be that protector. And so much that's about giving to our families, usually in more physical ways, that, whether it's financial, whether it's physical protection, that they don't think they need to worry about the emotional side. And maybe that's also because men don't need, in most cases, as much emotional support as women do. And so we don't understand how the women in our lives are really wired, and how much they do need that talking and that validation of their emotions and their feelings, where a man doesn't need that nearly as much in most cases. And that has to be learned.
Yeah. Do you think we're speaking different languages?
Listen, I mean, you can go back to the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, which I recently audio listened to for the first time. And it was, listen, I recommend that book now to everybody. I think there's so much misunderstanding of the opposite gender. We assume, I think the premise of that book is just so good, understanding us as just different species almost. We assume as men that women function more or less like us, except they're softer and prettier. And I think women assume that men are like them, except we're harder and tougher. And it's just so not the case. I mean, our operating system, so to speak, is entirely different. And nobody teaches that, and nobody learns that. And I think it would be it should be one of those core curriculum books that people would be learning in high school. I think would be such a blessing to society, that if we could just learn how to understand how we are different, and how to relate to the opposite gender in that sense. I think we would have a lot more healthier marriages, relationships, and children, because I think so many of the principles and the practices that we speak about within a marriage apply to kids as well. I mean, even as an example, I a number of years ago learned about the 5 love languages, which again was something I'd never been taught growing up, or even in the first 15, 20 years of my marriage. And when I finally learned those concepts, it was so eye-opening. But then I realized, you could take it a whole nother level, and it applies to children just as much as it applies to your spouse. Definitely, I think everyone should know their spouse's love language and learn how to speak it, the best they can. But then try to figure out your kids' love languages as well, because kids relate emotionally in very different ways, and they need to be fed emotionally in very different ways. And if we can understand how to speak that love language for our kids, then we can help them feel more emotionally supported much more easily in many cases.
Yeah, and you have 6 children. I have 5 children. And so I know very well each have their own individual needs and personalities to such an extreme. And so learning those individual differences, and as a mom, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm with my kids all the time. I communicate with them on a, hourly basis. And so it's much more organic. But for dads who most of the time are out working most of the week, there's much more limited access and time to the kids. Do you have any tips on learning how to communicate with your kids?
I would say the starting point is just be intentional that you're going to. And I always say that, if a father's not yet being there emotionally with his kids, the first step is have an intentional plan for how you are going to show up, because just being there with them is probably 80% of the way there. What we say, even if you've done all the homework and watched every parenting video, you're probably going to get it wrong half the time, especially if you've got teenagers. But if you could just be there with them and help them feel loved and supported, that's you've already won the game. So one of the big things I talk about for fathers, because like you said, fathers are usually out at work all day. They come home, they're with their kids for a couple of hours in the evening, is to have an intentional plan for how you transition from work to home at the end of the day. And the starting point for what that usually looks like in terms of how I teach it to people is, first and foremost, during your commute, before you come home, have a snack. eat an apple, have a candy bar, an energy bar, something, so that you're not hungry when you walk in. Because the worst thing we want to do is come in and be hangry, and just kind of low blood sugar levels, anything like that, that we're just already on edge. So we can cut that out right away there. And then, second of all, have some kind of meditation, affirmation, prayer, real short, could be long, doesn't have to be, before you walk in the house, to reaffirm how you want to be as a father and as a husband when you walk in. I'm not going to yell. I'm going to walk in and be patient. And then I usually recommend also, having some kind of gratitude reminders in there as well. Thanking God for the fact that I have this family. I'm walking into a wife who I love and adore so much. I have my children at home that I'm so thankful for, and are the biggest blessing that's been given into my life. And remind yourself of that. Because now when you walk in the door with that type of mindset, if you're grateful for them, you're not going to get angry nearly as easily. And because the reality is like, when we get home, there's often chaos. That's just how it is. And a lot of the time, especially with younger kids, sometimes it's not fun for parents. I'd say, especially for dads, sometimes it's not mentally stimulating. And we don't really want to read, that children's book for the 15th time. And we don't really care maybe about whatever the thing is that our kid's doing. But our kid cares, right? So it's got to be important, even though it's not stimulating us. So walking in the house with that intentionality. So again, the way I usually approach that is, now once you've walked in the door with the affirmations, your prayer, your mindset already, reestablished, first things first, your wife. Come in, greet her, give her a hug, give her a kiss. Gratitude. And again, I'm making assumptions that the wife is usually home before the man. It's not always the case. And most of what we're talking about can apply to a woman just as much as a man. But show gratitude and love to your wife first and foremost. Go to each kid, look to them in the eye, have genuine interest and love and appreciation. Just greeting them and asking them how their day was in a very brief way. Once that's all done, you've said hi to everybody. And again, come in with big energy and enthusiasm also, because often, the energy in the house might be low. You can come and lift it up just with how you enter the home, and fake it till you make it, right? Go put your phone away. Phones are the number one killer when it comes to dynamics in a home and a relationship. So decide, my phone is going to stay in the bedroom or someplace where I'm not going to see it. If you need to go change your clothes, if you need to use the restroom, whatever the thing is, like, go have your couple of minutes just to switch to home mode. If you need to go to the bathroom, I know dads are guilty of disappearing in there for a while. Make it a quick one. I know the game. I know how it works. Save that for later. Make it a quick one. Get out to your family and make the decision that you're going to be there, present with them for a period of time. Now, obviously, the responsibilities in the home are shared by both spouses, and they should be shared equally. Not necessarily with the same responsibilities, but the same amount of responsibilities. So I don't like to come in and say, go help your wife, but know where your responsibilities are. Come out now, and try to understand, where are my responsibilities? And in my home, my wife, when I come home, wants me to be with the kids. She wants a break from them. She'd rather be dealing with the cooking and making dinner and all those kind of things. So we know where we stand when we come home. But being aware of, what are people's emotional needs? How can I be with each one? And, for a dad who maybe isn't present right now, well, take baby steps. Start off by saying, I'm going to be here and be present for 30 minutes. But I'm going to be all in for those 30 minutes with my kids. And I'm going to talk to them, and I'm going to read with them. I'm going to play with them in whatever way your family dynamics need to work for that. And if you could only handle 30 minutes, well, then say, hey guys, I need to go take a nap now. I need to go veg out, whatever your thing is for a little bit. But, as you get better at it, learn to increase that time from 30 minutes to an hour to hopefully the whole evening, being there with your family and being present. Again, I think it's also important that, men and moms, of course, have your own time for whatever you need to recharge your batteries. So again, if you need to go to the gym, if you need to just, go veg out and watch TV or watch a movie for a little while, there's a time and a place for that. And everybody needs to have that time. But making sure you've carved out those intentional activities to be present with your family without phones, without distractions, is, I think, the best starting point that most men can do.
Oh, I love all that so much. That's so encouraging to hear.
Yeah.
And what would you say to the dad? Well, okay, so particularly my husband, he
Okay.
he says he always needs his decompression time.
Okay.
So the transition between work mode and dad mode, he says he needs this decompression time.
Okay.
And so how would you like, because for me, I'm like, well, could you save that for later so you can show up fully present? How would you
Mhm.
handle that? What advice would you give him?
Well, I would say the first advice is you two need to have a conversation about what that can mean and what can work for both of you. If he comes home and he says, he just needs that time, well, how much time does he need? 30 minutes? An hour? I mean, what does that mean? I'm not going to make you answer that because I don't want to throw your husband under the bus, right? But let's say it's 30 minutes. And he's just like, honey, like, I just need 30 minutes to just like lie down, veg out on Netflix. And like, after that, like, I'm here for you. Okay. So maybe you could agree to that. But then what would be fair in my book is like, you get the same thing, right? Because you're probably pretty tired, need some decompression also. I mean, you're a stay-at-home mom, like you said, and you're with the kids all day. I mean, what I didn't say in my normal come home transition intentionality that before is, if you can, come home and give your wife a break. Let her go put her feet up, let her go take a bath or a shower, or go for a run, whatever she needs for 30 minutes. I mean, that's already kind of, I don't want to say advanced level, but that's like the second level at least. But for a man who just comes home and he's beat, I mean, some guys get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and they're at work by 6 and they're working till 7 and like they have every right to be tired. Again, so does the mom. But if that's what they need and they just really need a few minutes of just like to let it all go, then again, communicate with your wife, take that, but then hopefully reciprocate it as well and come out. And after you've had that break though, make the decision to be present intentionally and to be with your family. I don't give anyone a pass on having the whole night for decompression until it's time to go to bed and, let your wife carry all that weight. That's unacceptable to me in almost all circumstances. But we also have to be realistic with ourselves and based on what somebody might be carrying, how tiring their day might be, et cetera, et cetera. And, also just where they are within their emotional tank of what they're able to do on any given day.
Yeah, and their emotional development and their
Yeah.
development into fatherhood and into their role as a husband. Because I know personally for me, we've had a big transition the last few years. And it was actually, my leadership that really actually brought us there. And that was me carving out that time for my needs and my self-care. And I had to be very firm with my boundaries around that. Because I actually let my husband just come home and veg out. And I
Mhm.
did everything. And I was totally martyred in our marriage and so resentful. And so, yeah, it's been a journey for us the last few years
Yeah.
to balance things back out. And it's so much more satisfying now. I can look at him and respect him and adore
Yep.
him instead of seeing him as another child that I have to take care of.
So then let me ask you, what did you do to help him step up and take more responsibility in the home? It
Well,
sounds like you got a fatherhood coach here now to your own husband.
No, and now we're working with coaches now too, so that is great. But he's not specifically with a fatherhood coach though, which I think would be really really great for him. That would be definitely like next level for him.
Mhm.
But it started with me turning that energy back on myself. And so I decided it started with 30 minutes. Honestly, I was like 30 minutes with no kids around, and it started with bubble bath. I'm going to take a 30-minute bubble bath by myself. I'm locking the door. You're in charge. I don't care if the baby cries. I don't care what happens. I'm checking out for 30 minutes. So that's how it started for me. And
Mhm.
then and that grew and grew and grew.
Okay.
And I have now set up the foundation and the boundaries to, live in the way that I want to live. And instead of feeling like a slave in my house, which is kind of where I was at before.
Yeah,
Uh,
listen, absolutely. I mean, it is unfortunate that, especially for men who maybe didn't have it modeled in their own childhood, they don't fully know what that means to take responsibility in the home. And especially, when we think, oh, well, my wife is a stay-at-home mom. She takes care of the kids. She takes care of the house. So she'll just continue doing that from the time she wakes up in the morning to the time she goes to bed at night, right? And that's just not fair. And so it's funny that you say, come home, give you a break, and you go take a bubble bath. Because that was exactly the example that, I often give is, once a guy has gotten to the point where, he does have some energy to give to, or some experience, some willpower, whatever the right word is, to be there, it's, come home and give your wife a break and go take a bath, go take a run, go take a nap, whatever it is that you need. because that goes so far. Because often what a man also wants when he comes home is just that attention from his wife, and the love from his wife, and for her to have a little bit in the gas tank still for him, and not let it all just be directed towards the chores and the kids and the cleaning and everything else that needs to go on. And if you can support your wife in most cases by giving her that break, she'll recognize that, and she'll recognize that he has done that for her. He carried that weight. He supported the family, and she'll be able to come out presumably more rested, and more appreciative. And usually that will reflect more attention back on the husband. And ultimately that's what most men want from their wives.
And I will say too that it works both ways, because again, like I said, I took the leadership role in this case, and I intentionally started greeting my husband at the door with love and affection.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually helped him to want to step up and provide in
Absolutely.
that way for me.
I
And
totally
so
agree.
it does go both ways. And that's part of the work that I do with women, because our energy can lead also, and
100%.
showing up.
100%.
Oh yeah.
I think it
Showing
leads
up.
in a very strong way.
Yep. Showing up with that love and attention first can really help your husband to want to step up into that role. It really can encourage them. And that was actually something that I wanted to ask you about. So what message do you have for wives? Because I assume most of the people listening to this podcast right now fall into that category. But what message do you have for your wives to help encourage them and support them? Encourage and support their husbands into taking these leadership roles.
Listen, I think most of the time it's in families, it's the women who recognize these needs more than the men do. I find that more often than not, it's the women that are reaching out to me within the work and the content that I put out, and saying, my husband needs this type of work, he needs this type of help, but I don't know if he's open to it. I don't know if he would want to talk to you. That's kind of where we are as a society, right? I do think that the first steps, in many cases, not that they should be taken by the woman, they shouldn't. They should be taken by the man, taking responsibility. But practically speaking, maybe they do have to be taken by the woman. And the woman recognizing where she can lift up her man to the point where, like you said, he wants to be better. Because what a man really wants, and going back to that polarity concept we spoke about before, is a man wants to feel recognized and respected in his home and appreciated in his home. And sometimes, the man needs to earn that a little bit more than he is. But, again, if the woman can come and just make him feel good, like you said, greet him at the door, give him a hug, show him how much he's loved, obviously, even take things, farther at the appropriate times, obviously with intimacy, initiating, that's usually what a man wants from his wife also, more often than women are often wanting to participate in those types of things. You're going to make your man feel good. You're going to make him want to step up. And he will also be much more receptive when you start bringing up concepts of, him getting his own help, and how can he, even if that's just, here's how you can support me in the home by doing certain things. And sometimes it's about, how do we ask them? Don't nag, don't tell them what to do. But if it's framed as, gosh, I would feel so loved and supported if you would do X, Y, and Z, a man is be much more responsive to that than if you say, honey, go take out the garbage. Why haven't you taken out the garbage yet? Or when he does take out the garbage, later say, it makes me feel so great when you're able to do that to take care of us. It's obviously feels silly when you say that about you taking the garbage, but that's the way the man's mind is going to be wired. So I think if a woman can gently encourage him to take those steps, it can go a long way to him feeling more comfortable and recognizing the impact that it makes on him, on his relationship with his wife, and obviously the relationship with his family, as he starts taking some steps on his own, and how much more so he can make faster progress by working with a coach or a therapist or something like that.
Yeah, I love everything you said. This is exactly how I coach my wife clients. So it fits right in. Yeah, it fits right in with the model that I use. And it, honestly, like, taking away the idea of fair or, right, it would probably be best and is the most natural for a man to lead in these ways. But unfortunately, because of the way society has been, feminism, lots of other political reasons, we are in a time now where it might take women leading energetically in this way more times than not. And part of that is stepping more into that appreciative, soft energy.
Mhm.
Men respond so much better to that, right?
And I think in our generation, like you said, I think so many women, through what I would say is like a false feminism, have come to this concept where they feel like they, again, women could have professions, work, of course, all those things, make lots of money, God bless them, they should be successful. But it's not a natural role for a woman, right? I think a woman's natural is, like you said, to be softer, to be more nurturing, to be, I don't want to say in the home, but to be doing the work that makes her feel emotionally fulfilled. That's a woman's role more. If she feels fulfilled in the workplace, then by all means, like, go do that. But not because you feel like you need to be the breadwinner, you need to be making money. Again, in some cases, in some families, financially, it is required that there are two, two incomes coming in, and do what you need to do to succeed by all means. But that doesn't mean that it's the emotional natural state. It means like that's a survival thing that needs to happen right now. The natural state should be that the man is the earner, is the protector, is the provider, and a woman is creating that emotional space for the family within that. That was another point I wanted to make along those lines. I guess it was maybe just something that I saw pointed out on Instagram recently, and I thought it was so true because my wife and I had had a previous conversation, is that a man will almost never be attracted to a woman more because she earns more. A man does not care how much a woman makes. It is just not a factor in any emotional way towards who he's going to love and want to take care of. So I don't remember what our original question was on the topic, but I know.
I don't know. That's fine. I could talk about this kind of stuff all day. Polarity, man-woman dynamics. This is like my cup of tea here. So.
Yeah. I recently, tried to look for more materials out there on the topic, and I think the best one that I came across was, as we mentioned before, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, does a pretty good job of explaining all this. Some of it I couldn't relate to and understand entirely, but again, everyone's got their different dynamics, and I think we all are on different places within a hierarchy or a span of some of us, I'll say of myself, in certain places where it spoke about the feminine masculine dynamic, I felt like, well, I'm actually a little bit more on the feminine side. But in most of the ways, I was more on the masculine side. And I think I maybe that's where we were before. I see with my own relationship and other women I meet, like they're stuck in their masculine a little bit, and that creates different dynamics within homes right now that aren't natural. And I think we just all need to, at least by understanding where our natural state is, as men, as women, setting it as a goal for women to be trying to become a little bit softer, to be able to find that place, because that will attract a man so much more. I mean, it'll attract your own husband so much more. And again, for men to be supportive and protective, again, emotionally, physically, that will attract your wife so much more. And then just having clear communication and explaining those things to each other. I think we do a better job of understanding what we want from our spouse than we do of understanding what we need to do ourselves for our spouse. And I think that's where the communication becomes really key, is that we can, in a sensitive way, explain to our spouses, what can they do for us to help us feel happier in the relationship, but then also volunteering and asking, what can I do for you? So that we don't feel like we're just asking, but we're also trying to give as well.
Yeah. And another really great resource is Love and Respect. What's the author's last name? Egrix, I think is his last name. Love and Respect, that model. And what that's based on is men need unconditional respect.
Mm-hmm.
That's the lifeblood for a man, and women need unconditional love. And if you haven't read it yet, that book, I've read it 3 or 4 times now.
Right.
And, still every time I will probably read it again, every time I learn something new, because it goes back to that languages. We're speaking different languages. And for men, it's the language of respect. For women, it's the language of unconditional love. And so to learn how to interpret each other's languages, maybe we can't speak the same language, but we can learn how to interpret each other's languages for sure.
Yeah. And it's just so unfortunate that so few people ever learn these things. The fact that, you learned it, late in your marriage, some of these books I'm only being turned on to, 20 years into my marriage. And, but it also proves that it's never too late to improve and fix a relationship, even a relationship that's good, and bringing it just to an even more fulfilling place for everybody involved. And as we said before, as the foundation for the family. One thing I would say is, first of all, the marriage first, even before the kids. You're for multiple reasons. One of them being that you are going to be as a couple together much longer than you're going to have kids. At a certain point, and I've experienced this, your kids start to move out. I've got 2 kids now who have moved out of my house already. My older kids, and thank God I've still got little ones also. But you recognize that there will be a time when it's just going to be the 2 of you, and you need to make sure that that foundation is strong. But secondarily, and maybe more importantly, is the fact that your relationship is modeling for your kids what a healthy marriage should look like. And if you want to give your kids the best gift that you could ever give them, at least to the best of your ability, the gift of a healthy relationship in the future. And obviously you can't pick for them who they are going to marry, but you can give them the best tools from the way that you model it for them to be the best spouse, that your boys learn from you, what it looks like to respect a woman and to be a good man. And that, again, I'm speaking to fathers, and what it looks like, for your daughters to learn, how should you be treated by a man? What should you be looking for in how a man should treat you? If a man is abusive, God forbid, to his wife, a daughter might learn to think that's normal and tolerate that behavior later on in life. And God forbid any of us should ever teach a young woman that's acceptable and that's okay and to be tolerated. That's a horrible thing. So if for no other reason, make your marriage as passionate and loving and emotionally fulfilling for both sides, for your kids. And obviously, you'll benefit tremendously yourself as well.
Yeah, and that was speaking to moms. That was such a huge turning point for me in my self-development and my self-growth, was seeing with my eldest daughter the disrespect for men that I was modeling.
Mm-hmm.
And when she would say things and I would hear myself in it, it was a mirror to me.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, wow, I'm teaching her to be a disrespectful wife in the future. And that was one of the big things and with my second eldest, I noticed she was taking on some of my martyring tendencies. Mm-hmm. And another huge awakening for me. I'm like, wow, this is what I'm modeling to my daughters on how to be a wife and a mother. And I said, no more, I'm stopping that here. So luckily,
I said, our kids are paying attention to us.
They are, and they will be, your relationship will be your number one mirror. Your marriage will be your number one mirror, but children are good mirrors too. And if you're willing to look at that reflection and really take it in, it can be a pivotal point to self-growth.
Yeah. I appreciate that. It's a good point.
Yeah. Well, we're coming towards the end of our hour, and I have one more question that I would like to ask you. So, sure. What does the BIG Fatherhood Framework stand for?
Okay, so the BIG Fatherhood Framework is the framework that I teach fathers that I work with in my coaching program. And essentially the B stands for belief. Believe in yourself as a father, that you can be a better father, that you can whatever failings you think you might have up until this point can be fixed and you can succeed. Believe in your kids, believing that they will succeed, that God will help them be successful, even if you make some mistakes. Just have a long-term approach, recognize there'll be ups and downs, don't get worked up and caught up in those things, and trust that things are going to work out okay if you show up in a positive way for your kids. And also believe in God, that with his blessings that everything will be good in your life and in your children's lives, and trust the process. The I is for intentionality. It's kind of the core of the program, because the intentionality is about having action plans in terms of how we're going to behave and deciding how we want to behave with our families. When we, as we spoke about earlier in the interview, we spoke about how do we transition from work to home. Have an intentional plan for how you want to do that. weekends are hard for a lot of families. They're unstructured time. Kids aren't going to school. You're not going to work. How are you going to spend your weekends? Are you just going to wake up and just see where things go on a Sunday morning? Or are you going to, plan in advance, hey, so we're going to go to the park, and then we're going to go to grandma's house, and we're going to do all these things. And I'm going to have a structured day of intentionally how I want to show up. As intentionality could be having those hard conversations that we might want to avoid with our spouse, with our kids, as it goes. There's a lot of intentional steps and programs that we could build within our lives. That's kind of the core, I believe, of being a better father. And then the G is gratitude, being grateful for the gifts that we have in our life, because it just elevates everything in terms of the energy in our lives when we're grateful for the things that we have, because so many of us are essentially all of us are just so blessed by what we have. And sometimes we tend to focus on the things that are going wrong rather than things that are going good in our lives. And when we can make that an intentional exercise in gratitude within our day, we can uplift ourselves. So really, I look at the B, belief, and the G, gratitude, as being the mindset element of keeping us motivated to be able to fulfill the plans that we create for ourselves in the intentional element of that. And so that's essentially what I'm working with men on.
Yeah, well, and that applies to everybody, not just
Certainly.
fathers.
Certainly, it applies to everybody. I'm working primarily with fathers, so that's what I talk about. But it certainly applies to moms just as much.
Yeah, that's a great framework just for life. So,
Yeah.
Well, how can my audience get in touch with you? If there are dads out there, maybe I'll pass your information along to my husband. If there are dads out there that are listening that would like to work with you, how can they get in touch with you? What's your website, your social media, anything else that you'd like to
Yeah,
share?
absolutely. I mean, I'd invite anyone to get in touch. My website is dadcoach.co. You can get in touch with me from there. Or I'm very active on Instagram, at Aaron Zakowski. Same thing on LinkedIn, where I tend to post a bunch of content as well. Or you could go aaron@dadcoach.co. We'd love to talk with anybody there. And again, whether you're a dad who wants some help, or if you're a mom who wants to figure out, how can you get some help for your husband, would happy for you to reach out, and I'll try and do anything I can to support you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I'll have everything linked in the show notes for people to get in touch with you with one click. I so appreciate you coming on. It's been such a delight, such a good polarity here to see to see the balance that we're both creating for mothers and fathers. And so I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
This was so much fun. Thanks, Nicole.